Your neighbors are going to step outside this August and look at your yard and stop. Not because you worked harder than them, not because you spent more money than them, because you made one smart decision this June that they didn't. 13 perennials, one planting window, a yard so covered in color, so alive, and so full that people slow down just to look at it. These plants spread on their own. They come back every single year. They multiply for free while you are sitting on your porch. And if you miss this window, you wait another full season. So let's not waste a single second. Here's exactly what to plant right now. Before plant number 1, drop in the comments right now what US state you're gardening in. Your USDA zone completely changes which of these 13 plants will perform best for you. I will be calling out specific zones throughout this entire video. Find yours and pay attention. Plant 1, Purple Coneflower, Echinacea purpurea, to USDA zones 3 to 9. Most people walk right past this plant at the nursery because they think they already know it. They see the pink-purple petals, the orange center, and they think, nice, but nothing special. They are missing everything that matters about this plant. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about coneflower. It is one of the most aggressively self-sufficient perennials in North American gardening. Plant one crown in June, walk away, come back in 2 years, and you will have a colony that expanded on its own, fed itself on its own, and asked you for nothing. Picture a summer border in mid-July. 6-inch flower heads in deep rosy purple, hovering on 4-foot stems above your pathway. The center cone is a rich burnt orange that catches afternoon light like a lantern. Butterflies are landing constantly. Goldfinches are already eyeing the seed heads. And you have not touched that plant since you put it in the ground. Echinacea purpurea is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9 that covers Minnesota, Texas, the entire mid-Atlantic, the Pacific Northwest, and the Deep South. There is almost no American gardening zone where this plant will not thrive, spread, and perform year after year. It spreads 2 ways simultaneously. Underground, the root crown slowly expands outward, producing more stems each season. Above ground, those dramatic seed heads drop viable seeds in fall that germinate the following spring as completely new, independent plants. You plant one, you eventually have 20. At nursery prices of $8 to $12 per plant, one established coneflower clump, divided every 4 years, produces 8 to 10 viable divisions. That is $80 to $100 worth of free plants from a single morning with a garden fork. That is not gardening. That is investing. Leave those seed heads standing through winter. Do not cut them down. The goldfinches, chickadees, and housefinches feed on them from October through February. Your garden becomes a wildlife feeding station that costs you absolutely nothing to operate. Native to the tallgrass prairies of eastern North America, coneflower evolved in this soil. It does not need your help. It does not need rich amended beds. It performs best in average to poor soil with excellent drainage and full sun. Give it your toughest spot. That is where it will show you what it can do. Tell me in the comments right now, have you ever divided a perennial and given the divisions away for free? Because this is the plant that makes that happen every few years without fail. Drop your state below and hit the like button if this is already giving you something your garden needed. I read every single comment. Plant 2, Perennial Salvia. Salvia nemorosa May night, USDA zones 4-8. If deer have walked through your garden 2 summers in a row and eaten everything you planted, this is the conversation you should have had before you spent another $1 at the garden center. Salvia nemorosa May night is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 8. Deep indigo violet flower spikes. Some of the most saturated, most electric blue tones available in any perennial. Rising above compact mounding foliage from late May straight through July. And then, if you do one thing correctly, it blooms again in September. 2 full bloom seasons from one plant. 1 cut after the first flush. That is it. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about salvia. Deer avoid it completely, not occasionally completely. The aromatic oils in the foliage are strong enough that deer evaluate it at the approach stage and move on before they ever attempt to taste it. Unlike spray repellents that wash off in the first rain and need reapplying every 2 weeks all season, this plant is the repellent. It is on all day, every day, all season, year after year. Picture your border in early June. 18-inch spikes in deep indigo purple, rising in tight vertical columns above silver-green aromatic foliage. The color is so saturated, it almost looks painted. Bumblebees are working every single spike from base to tip. Your neighbor with the plain green border stops on the sidewalk and actually asks you what that plant is. It spreads through basal offshoots each season. One plant in June becomes a generous clump by September. Divide it in early spring every 3 years. Each division is a fully viable blooming plant at zero cost. At $12 per plant at most garden centers, one 3-year-old clump gives you 4 to 6 free plants from a single morning, 2 plants in. And I want to ask you something. How much money have you spent at the garden center in the last 3 springs, replacing things that didn't survive? If this channel saves you even one unnecessary trip, subscribing is the smartest free decision you make today. Hit that button right now. It costs you nothing, and it means this kind of information finds you every single week. Plant 3. Coreopsis. Tick seed. Coreopsis verticillata Zagreb, like USDA, zones 3 to 9. There is no other perennial at this price point that blooms for 5 uninterrupted months without deadheading, without fertilizing, without asking you for a single thing in return. 5 months. June through October. Most flowering perennials give you 4 to 6 weeks. Zagreb gives you an entire season. Coreopsis verticillata Zagreb is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. Daisy-like flowers in clear, bright golden yellow, covering a low mounding plant of fine thread-like foliage that looks almost like a green cloud when not in bloom. The flowers open in June, and they do not stop until frost. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about Coreopsis. It produces its best, most prolific bloom in lean, dry, neglected soil. Rich, heavily amended beds make it floppy, weak, and disappointing. Poor, dry, rocky, ignored soil makes it bloom harder and more continuously than you expected. This plant rewards your neglect. Picture the front of your border in late July, when most gardens are starting to look tired. Zagreb is at its absolute peak, a solid mound of clear golden yellow flowers, so dense you can barely see the foliage underneath. It glows in afternoon light. It does not fade in August heat. It does not slow down in the dry weeks. It keeps going. It spreads reliably through shallow underground rhizomes. One plant expands steadily each season. Divide every 3 to 4 years in early spring. One mature clump produces 6 to 8 viable divisions. At $10 per plant at any nursery, that is $60 to $80 worth of plants, from a single morning and a sharp spade. Plant it in full sun. Do not fertilize it. Do not amend the soil. Do not baby it. Put it in your worst, driest, most neglected border spot, and come back in September. That is not gardening advice. That is a promise. Plant 4. Liatris Blazing Star. Liatris spicata. USDA zones 3 to 8. Every other flowering perennial on this list opens its blooms from the bottom of the stem up. Liatris does the opposite. It opens from the top down. That single fact makes it one of the most visually distinctive plants in any American summer garden. The moment you know that, you cannot stop noticing it. Liatris spicata is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8. Tall vertical spikes, sometimes reaching 4 feet in vivid rose purple, opening from the tip downward through July and August. The silhouette is architectural. The color is unlike anything else in the summer garden, and nothing else does what it does for monarch butterflies in your yard. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about Liatris. It is documented by Monarch Watch as one of the top 5 nectar sources for monarch butterflies during their summer breeding season. When monarchs are building the generation that will eventually migrate to Mexico, they need high-quality, reliable nectar plants. Your Liatris is not just beautiful, it is feeding a migration. Picture your garden in late July. 4-foot purple spires rising above the border like vertical exclamation points. Monarchs landing constantly, working the spikes from top to bottom, just as they open. Tiger swallowtails visiting. Bumblebees moving from flower to flower all morning. Your Liatris is doing more ecological work per square foot than almost any other plant you could grow. It grows from corms, small bulb-like structures that multiply underground each season. Divide every 3 to 4 years in early spring. Each corm division produces a fully flowering plant the first season. Plant in full sun, in well-draining soil, and ignore it completely. It handles drought, poor soil, and summer heat with no visible stress. Leave the spent flower spikes standing through fall and winter. The small seeds feed goldfinches, sparrows, and finches through the coldest months. The dried architectural spikes provide genuine winter interest. When most of your border is bare and brown, your garden earns its keep in every season. Plant 5. Penstemon, beard-tongue Penstemon, digitalis Husker Red, USDA zones 3 to 8. This is the most underused spreading perennial in American home gardening right now. Experienced native plant gardeners have it in every border they own, and they do not talk about it much. Part of them quietly likes that their neighbors don't know what it is. Beginners have genuinely never heard of it. That gap is precisely why it belongs on this list. Penstemon Husker Red is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8. The foliage starts deep burgundy red in spring, a color so rich it looks almost artificial, and transitions through the season. White tubular flowers, with the faintest pink blush, open in June and July on 2 to 3 foot stems. The flower shape is tubular, biologically engineered. Hummingbirds hover directly in front of each flower and feed continuously all season long. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about Penstemon. It is the only perennial on this list that provides 3 distinct seasons of ornamental value. Burgundy foliage in spring before bloom, white flowers through June and July, and deep reddish bronze seed heads and foliage through fall and winter. It earns its space 365 days a year. It is a profuse self-seeder. Plant one this June, and by the following spring, you will have a generous new crop of seedlings appearing around the mother plant. Each seedling is a fully independent, blooming plant. The colony expands itself. You simply observe and edit where you want them. Native to eastern North America. Evolved for American soil, American rainfall patterns, American wildlife. Once established, it requires no supplemental watering, no fertilizer, no intervention. It is genuinely one of the most self-sufficient plants you can put in the ground this month. Plant 6. Russian Sage, Perennial Salvia, USDA zones 4 to 9. 6 plants in. And if you have genuinely learned something in the last few minutes that your garden needed, I want you to do one thing before plant number 7. Subscribe right now, not at the end of the video now. Because here's what I know about gardeners who subscribe in the middle of a video. They are the ones who actually come back. They are the ones whose gardens look completely different 2 seasons from now. Be that gardener. Hit subscribe right now. Russian sage is one of the most misidentified plants in American gardening. People see it from the road and think it is lavender. It is not. And the difference matters because Russian sage grows in zones 4 through 9, survives zone 4 winters with almost no protection, tolerates heat and drought that would destroy true lavender, and blooms continuously from July through October. 4 months of blue-purple flowers on silver-white stems, from Minnesota straight through Georgia. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about Russian sage. It looks better in the ground every year it grows. The first season it establishes. The second season it fills and blooms magnificently. The third season it is a spectacular, architectural, nearly 4-foot silver-blue cloud that people slow down to look at from their cars. The plant does not just come back, it improves. No pest pressure. Deer avoid it completely. Rabbits avoid it. The aromatic foliage repels insects naturally. It stands upright without staking. And even after bloom ends in fall, the silver stem architecture provides genuine winter structure when every other border on your street looks bare and abandoned. 1 maintenance task per year. Cut it back to 6 inches in late February or early March. 30 seconds of work. In return, it comes back fuller and more floriferous than the season before. That exchange is almost unreasonably fair. Plant 7. Rudbeckia Goldsturm, Rudbeckia fulgitivare, Sullivanti, USDA, zones 3 to 9. Most people know the wild black-eyed Susan from American roadsides. They have driven past it their entire lives. And people still pay $8 to $10 a pot for it at garden centers every spring. What they do not know is that Goldsturm, the cultivated variety, blooms longer, spreads more reliably, and performs better in garden conditions than the roadside species by a margin that university horticultural trials have repeatedly documented. Rudbeckia fulgida, Goldsturm, is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9, golden yellow petals radiating out from a near black chocolate center. It starts blooming in July and does not stop until hard frost, sometimes October in most zones. Right when most summer gardens start looking exhausted, Goldsturm is just hitting its stride. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about Goldsturm. It spreads 2 ways simultaneously. Underground rhizomes push outward each season, expanding the clump quietly beneath the soil without you seeing it happen. And the seed heads drop seeds that germinate into brand new, independent plants the following spring. Plant 1 in June. By year 3, you have a sweeping colony you never touched. Leave those seed heads standing through winter, Do not cut them down in your fall cleanup. Goldfinches, sparrows, and chickadees feed on them from October straight through February. Your Goldsturm border feeds birds for free through the hardest months of the year, while your neighbors are spending money on plastic feeders. As an American native, once established, Goldsturm needs significantly less water, less fertilizer, and less attention than nearly any non-native plant you could buy at that same garden center. It was built for this soil. It belongs in American gardens. Plant 8. Agastache. Anise hyssop. Agastache fummaculum. USDA. Zones 4. This plant grows 6 inches from your outdoor seating area, and on a still summer evening, you will smell it before you see it. Not faintly, strongly. The fragrance carries anise, licorice, mint, an herbal sweetness that fills outdoor spaces, the way expensive candles try to replicate indoors and fail. Agastache funiculum is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9. Blue lavender flower spikes, from July through September, on plants that reach 3 to 4 feet. The bloom is dense, continuous, and covered in pollinators every hour of every day it flowers. Dozens of bee species, hummingbirds, monarch butterflies, painted ladies, more visible wildlife activity than almost any other plant on this list. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about Agastache. The leaves are completely edible and brew into a tea that tastes remarkably like herbal anise with a cool mint finish. You are growing a pollinator garden and a functional kitchen herb at the same time from the same plant. The flowers are also edible. Use them fresh in salads. Dry the leaves for tea all winter. It self-seeds prolifically. Plant 1 this June, and by the following spring, you will have a generous new crop of seedlings appearing around the mother plant. Each seedling is a fully independent blooming plant. The colony expands itself on its own schedule. Cut the entire plant back by a third in midsummer for a flush of fresh growth, and a second, heavier bloom push in late August. That one cut turns a good plant into a spectacular one. Plant 9, Veronicastrum, Culver's root, Veronicastrum virginicum, USDA, zones 3 to 8. This plant is one of the most extraordinary natives in American horticulture, and almost nobody is growing it in their home garden. It is in botanical gardens. It is in professional landscapes. Designers who charge $200 an hour specify it constantly, and the average American gardener has never heard of it. That gap is your opportunity. Veronicastrum virginicum is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8, tall, sometimes reaching 6 feet, with whorls of lance-shaped leaves arranged symmetrically around the stem at regular intervals. White to pale lavender flower spikes in July and August that make every other plant in the border look unfinished by comparison. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about Culver's root. It is a 100% American native that evolved in tall grass prairies and woodland edges across the eastern United States. Once established, it is essentially no pest pressure, no deer browsing, no insect damage, no disease. It simply grows, blooms, stands upright, without staking, and keeps improving every season. It spreads slowly and reliably through underground rhizomes, not aggressively, reliably. Over 4 to 5 years, it forms a substantial, well-behaved clump that you divide and multiply. Each division produces a blooming plant the second season. Your patience with this plant is repaid with compounding interest. Plant it at the back of a border where height is needed. Pair it with coneflowers, with liatris, with ornamental grasses. It gives vertical punctuation to a planting that makes everything around it look more intentional. Designers reach for it because it solves the height problem without the invasiveness. Now you know what they know. Plant 10, Monarda raspberry wine, Monarda didyma, cherry mine, USDA zones 3 times 9. 10 plants in, and I want to say something directly to you. If you have made it this far, you are serious about this. You are not a casual scroller. You want a garden that actually works. You want real information from someone who has gone deep enough to find it. That is exactly what this channel is built for, every single week. Subscribe right now, if you haven't already. Hit the bell. The gardeners who subscribe today are the ones whose yards look completely different by this time next year. Be one of them. If you have never had a hummingbird hover 2 feet from your face while you are sitting in your own backyard, this is the plant that makes that happen. And once it happens once, you will never garden without Monarda again. Monarda didyma, raspberry wine, is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. The flowers are spiky, tubular, and vivid, deep raspberry red-pink, with a complexity of color that most perennials cannot match. That tubular shape is biologically engineered for hummingbird feeding. Their beaks fit perfectly inside. They return every single day, all season long. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about bee balm. It is in the mint family. The leaves are completely edible and brew into a tea that tastes remarkably similar to Earl Grey, specifically the bergamot note that gives Earl Grey its distinctive character. You are growing a hummingbird garden and a functional kitchen herb from the same plant at the same time. Raspberry wine was specifically selected for mildew resistance, the one issue that gives older bee balm varieties an undeserved reputation. This cultivar does not have that problem. Plant it, enjoy it, divide it every 3 years, and collect free plants for the rest of your gardening life. Plant 11, Silphium, cup plant, Silphium perfoliatum, USDA zones 3 to 9. This plant does something no other perennial on this list does. Its leaves are fused directly to the stem, creating natural cups at every leaf node that collect rainwater. Real cups, functional. Goldfinches, warblers, and native bees drink from them. Birds bathe in them during heat waves. You will watch wildlife interact with your garden in ways that make every other plant look passive by comparison. Silphium perfoliatum is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. It reaches 8 to 10 feet tall, a genuine giant, with bright yellow sunflower-like flowers from July through September. It creates an instant privacy screen or windbreak. It gives vertical drama to a large space that nothing else at this price achieves. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about cup plant. It is documented by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as one of the most ecologically productive native plants in North America for birds. Goldfinches eat the seeds specifically. The cup leaves feed birds and pollinators. The tall stems provide nesting material. One plant is doing more ecological work than most entire gardens. It self-seeds generously. One plant becomes a colony. Give it room in a large border, or use it as a back-of-border anchor where height is the goal. It does not need staking. It handles drought once established, and every season it gets more productive, more beautiful, and more alive with wildlife. If you have a large, difficult, hot, dry, ignored corner that has defeated everything else you have tried, plant cup, plant this June. Give it one season, come back in October, and tell me you are not completely surprised. Plant 12, Baptisia, false indigo, Baptisia australis, USDA, zones 3 to 9. This is the one plant on this list that improves your soil while it grows. Most plants take from the soil. Baptisia gives back. It is a legome in the same botanical family as clover, and its root system fixes atmospheric nitrogen directly into the surrounding soil. Every season it grows, the soil around it becomes more fertile. It is feeding itself and feeding your garden at the same time. Baptisia australis is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. Deep blue purple flowers in May and June, the richest, most saturated indigo blue of any perennial available to American gardeners, on a rounded shrub-like plant that reaches 3 to 4 feet. After bloom, inflated charcoal black seed pods form that rattle in the breeze and provide extraordinary fall and winter interest. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about Baptisia. This plant lives for 20 to 30 years, in the same spot without division, without amendment, without any input from you. Once established, which takes 2 to 3 seasons, it is permanent. You are not planting a perennial. You are planting a living fixture that will be there for the rest of your time in that house. The root system is deep and extensive. This is why it is drought tolerant, wind resistant, and virtually impossible to kill once established. Choose its location carefully. Baptisia does not relocate gracefully, but in the right spot, it will redefine that area of your garden for decades. Plant 13, Sanguisorba, Great Burnet, Sanguisorba officinalis, Segasorba. Every plant on this list earns its place from June through August. This one earns its place in September and October. When the rest of your garden is slowing toward dormancy, Sanguisorba is at its peak, and the flower it produces looks almost impossible. Sanguisorba officinale is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8. Deep wine burgundy to near black rounded flower heads, like dark velvet buttons, floating on 4 to 5 foot wiry stems that move beautifully in any breeze. The contrast of those dark, rich flower heads against the golden autumn landscape surrounding them looks almost painted. It looks like someone made a decision about composition, not like something that simply grew. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about Sanguisorba. It is genuinely one of the most under-discussed plants in American perennial gardening. The designers who use it get it from specialty nurseries, and they do not advertise what it is. The people who grow it in their private gardens keep it somewhat to themselves. Now you know, this is your hidden gem. It blooms when the garden needs it most. Most perennials peak in June and July. By September, reliable color options are thin. Sanguisorba fills that exact gap with a color and texture that nothing else provides. Dark, rich, sophisticated, and completely unexpected. It spreads through self-seeding and slow rhizome expansion. Give it well-drained soil and full-to-part sun. Divide every 4 years for maximum vigor. We are not ending here, because you can plant every single one of these 13 perennials and still fail if you do not know 3 specific things. These are the mistakes that kill more spreading perennials than drought, cold, pests, and neglect combined. Rule 1. Fix drainage before you plant anything. Poor drainage kills more spreading perennials than drought, cold, and neglect combined. Before you put a single plant in the ground this June, test your drainage. Dig a hole 12 inches deep. Fill it completely with water. If that water has not fully drained within 1 hour, you have a drainage problem that will undermine every plant on this list. Fix it with coarse sand and compost, worked deeply into the existing soil, or build a raised bed above the problem area. Do this once. Do it right. It permanently changes what your soil can support. Rule 2. Division is free money. Use it. Every plant on this list can be divided. Most of them should be divided every 3 to 4 years to maintain peak performance. Every division is a complete, fully viable blooming plant that costs you nothing beyond the time it takes to dig and separate it. At current nursery prices, $10 to $15 per perennial, one mature established clump yields $50 to $150 worth of free plants from a single morning. You should never buy a plant twice that you already have growing in your yard. Rule 3. Leave the seed heads standing. Every autumn, the instinct is to cut everything down. Clean it up. Make it look tidy. Resist that instinct. The seed heads you cut down are the food source that goldfinches, sparrows, and chickadees depend on through winter. They are the overwintering habitat that beneficial insects need to complete their life cycles and return to your garden next spring. They are the natural reseeding mechanism that multiplies your plants for free while the ground is frozen. Leave them standing. Your garden will be more alive, more ecologically connected, and more naturally abundant for it. And you will do less work in the process. You just spent time learning 13 plants that will change what your yard looks and feels like by August. And keep changing it, keep improving it, keep expanding it for years from now without you having to start over every spring. That is not just a gardening video. That is a plan. A real, specific, actionable plan for a yard that takes care of itself and rewards you more every single season. If this gave you even one plant you are going to put in the ground this June, subscribe right now. Because next week, we go just as deep. And the week after that, every single week, this channel releases content at this level. Real plant knowledge, real zone-specific guidance, real information that saves you money and changes how your outdoor space performs. You do not want to be the person who finds this channel 6 months from now and wishes they had subscribed today. The gardeners who subscribed at the beginning of this video are already ahead. Join them right now. Hit subscribe, hit the bell. And before you go, drop one comment below. Tell me which plant from this list you are putting in the ground first, this June. And tell me what state or zone you are gardening in. I read every single comment. I respond to as many as I can. And your answers directly shape the videos I make next. This is your garden. This is your season. June is open right now.